Hello guys, my name is Khan, and actually in today's video we will talk about R Shiny. So in this set of videos we will talk about a bit about the advanced features of R Shiny. So, and this video set will be more kind of continuation from last videos that I have made about R Shiny. But before going further in this video, I will go over very quickly about the concepts that we covered in our previous videos. So the thing that I will start with very basic, that suppose if I have to establish my first Shiny app, so this is the file that I have used in my previous videos. So I will just quickly open it up, and then I will go through the code very quickly, that what we have done, and then I will go through one by one with other code files that we have constructed and what are the features. But I will not be covering all the things, but I will be giving a quick overview about the things that we have done in the past. I will just maximize this code file into a separate window. So again, in these set of videos we will be using a Shiny library. So if you haven't installed the Shiny package before, so there is no need to worry, it's very easy to install. So if you go to tools, and then you click here install packages. So if you click install packages, and here you just can simply write down Shiny and then you can install it. I have already installed it, so I'm not going to install it again. I will cancel it, and then in order to use the Shiny functions, I have to write down the library Shiny. Then actually Shiny, while using the Shiny library, the Shiny library divides the functionalities between user interface and server. So the user interface allows mostly where you can opt different values or opt different choices. Whereas in the server, what servers do is that it, based on the choices that you have selected in the user interface, based on that the servers do some data manipulation or analysis, and in the end create the output results, and then you can use those output results in your user interface. So it's both, you can say here, the user interface and the server are kind of links with each other. So the user interface gives the values or gives the inputs to the server, and then server do some calculation and return the outputs to the user interface. So again, the Shiny package really divides your coding into two phases: the user interface part and the server part. So again, what I will start with this line. Here what I'm doing is I'm making an object UI. You can name it whatever you want, and then I'm using a Shiny function, Shiny UI, and then I'm using the fluid page functionality. There are many other options available, but mostly I'm happy with the fluid page, because then if you're using the fluid page functionalities, then you don't have to be much worried about the dimension of your page, of your dashboard. It will keeps on changing according to your browser, because we have used this functionality. And then after that, under the fluid page, I will be telling that what will be the title panel, so what will be the heading over my dashboard, and then what is sidebar layout. Actually, let me run this code, and then I think it will be more appropriate to go through or discuss this code. Control A, Control Enter. So this is my dashboard. This is a very basic dashboard. So this is the heading, the title of my dashboard, and as you can see here, I have written down the title panel is my first dashboard app, and then I'm using the sidebar layout. So under user interface, you can divide your page into two categories: a sidebar panel and main panel. So under my sidebar layout, I am saying that my sidebar layout position is right, that I want my sidebar panel is on the right hand side. So you can say this thing is known as the sidebar panel, and I'm mentioning it that I want it in the right hand side. By default it's on the left hand side, but if I don't specify this value or this part, then by default our Shiny will make it on the left side, but I want it on the right side. Therefore I mention this option, and then after that I am telling that what I want to see under my sidebar panel. So under my sidebar panel, so I am saying that the first thing that I want is the heading of my sidebar panel. So here the title panel is the heading of my dashboard, whereas this sidebar panel, I'm saying that write down the heading. This dashboard is designed to get information from the college students. But not down here is that what is this H1? So actually H1 is a function which can allow you to control the size of your text. So H1, as you can see, that is very abnormally very big, and if I say H2, the font size will reduce. So let me close it. Now if I execute it, Control S, A, Control D, as you can see the size start reducing, and as I move it to H4, it will be very small or compared to what we had before. As you can see that the font size get reduced. And after that, after mentioning the heading, what I am doing is that I have saying I want a text input. So what is the text input? So under the text input you can write whatever you want to write, and whatever you will write will get saved into this level input object. And this thing is, I want that text input box, I want it to be labeled as what is your degree level. So let's say if I execute my code, Control A, Control Enter, maximize it. So these are the text inputs. So whatever I will write, LSE, so suppose what is your college name is LSE. So this is my input value which will get saved into this object, input object, that I can call later in my code. But I want this text box to be labeled or captioned as what is your college name, so which I have written down here. So after that, and so actually again I have used the second text input with that what is your degree level, and then first I have used the text input that what is your college name. So I have used two text input, but both are working in the same way. And then what I want to know, then I use the functionality of main panel, that what I want to print it here. So whatever, if you see whatever I'm writing down is in my text input, it got printed in my main panel. So this section of your report or your dashboard is named as main panel. In this video I will also let you know that it's not necessary that you use these text inputs or select inputs always in the sidebar panel. You can even use these things in the main panel. If you don't mention sidebar panel, then this panel will not appear. But most of the time we divide our dashboard into sidebar panel and the main panel. You can put everything of the features like select input or text inputs directly into your main panel too. But it's a good practice to divide your select input, the things that you can enter into a sidebar panel, and the things that you want to be shown to the user as a result in the main panel. But it depends the way you want. So before discussing the main panel, I will first go to server, because the things that I will be showing in my main panel will be derived from my server, and then I will be returning it to the main panel. So actually user interface in the Shiny server works in a kind of a cycle. So first things get entered into user interface, then server generates some analysis or manipulation or results for you, and then you use those outputs into user interface part, mostly under the main panel. So what I do now under the Shiny server, I hope that you already know what this functionality means. So I'm making a Shiny server function which will contains input and output. Inputs will be coming from my user interface part, and then based on those inputs I will be creating outputs, and then I will be using those outputs under my main panel. So what I will do here I simply use a render text function. So I'm saying capture the text which is got entered into this input name, and again I'm doing the same thing, and that I'm capturing the text which is got entered in the level input, and I'm saving all those things by using this render text function into an output object out level, and then I'm using those output objects under my main panel. So under my main panel, in order to call my output objects, I'm using functions like text output, and here again, but there are many other functions like in order to call your output variables. Suppose if you have captured a plot in your output object, then you will be using plot output, and if you have captured a table in your output object, then you will be using table output. And I have discussed in very much detail about those objects in my previous videos. So this is, and again in order to, so first I have made a UI object, and then I have made a server object. Again, you can name it whatever you want. There is not need to name it as UI and the server. But in order to run this application, I have to use Shiny app, and then I'm calling UI and server objects that I have created above to run this application. But many users, what they do is that they divide the UI function part of the code into a separate R code file, and the server part into a separate code file. They usually do that thing because, especially when you will be making your dashboard, sometimes your user interface part becomes so big and the server part becomes so big, so they want into two different code file. There is both of the things will do the same thing. If you code like this, then you need to use this function Shiny app. Let me show the other way you can do. I will be using this way of writing down the code, in which I will be using the same code file, in which I will be making both the user interface and the server part. But I will show you guys that there is another way of coding the same thing. I will close it down. I will open up the second part. So the other way is that you made a user interface code file separately and the server code file separately. But here the thing is that under the folder where you're making these code file, the name of these files must be UI and the server, otherwise you will get an error. So I will be opening this UI. So under this file you can see that I have just the user interface part. I am not assigning it to any object. But here if you see, if I have the run app button, so once I will be clicking this run app, it will automatically go into my working directory and will look for server.r file, which I have already in that folder, and it will make almost the same dashboard that I had before. So let's see if I do it. Again, you can see that we have a code file and it will be running like 40, if I say 45, it got printed here. So it's working perfectly fine, but the important thing to note here is that I don't have server part within this code file. I have the server part into the separate file, and when I'm using the user interface part, I'm not assigning it to any UI object. But in this way of coding, you have to code your file. So suppose currently we are in a user interface part, your .r file must be named as UI.r, and your server file, which will be dealing with data manipulation and data analysis part, or that part should be named as server.r. I will take you guys that now to the server.r. So this is the server.r file, and under the server.r file you can see that I am doing the same coding which I have done before, but in this code file there is no user interface part, and I'm not assigning it to this functionality to any server object. So, but important thing to note here is that my .r file is named as server.r, and I'm not using here any Shiny app function in which I was calling the objects that I have created before. So again, if I click it here, it will do the same thing, because whenever, if even from UI or from the server.r, whenever I will run, the code will automatically look for the second file. So in this case, the second file is UI.r, and then create this dashboard. But I usually don't prefer this way. I want both the server functionality and the user interface functionality within the same code file. So I will close it down. So this is the way you can also do it. After that, what I will do now is that I will take you guys to another code file that we had created before, is the select input and the radio button file. So I will quickly go about what the select input and radio button. So these are very important functionalities that we mostly use in Shiny server. So suppose if I first execute the code, and then I will show what kind of dashboard it is. Control A, Control Enter. So this is the dashboard that we had before. So as you can see, these are the text input that we had already discussed. But here you can see that here is written down in which city do you live, and there is a down arrow here. So if I click any, say, so there are three options for me. So I will say London. So once I selected London, the London is got printed in my main panel. Also, there is some sort of graph got plotted, but if you notice that there is a x-axis which is in the London, and think the employment trend in London compared to the world employment. So in this chart, we are comparing that how employment rate compared to the world employment. And if I change the London to New York, you can see that my results got changed. The output here is now written down New York. My axis is got changed. And if now, and on the other side we have a radio button. So what is your marital status? Saying married. So married got printed here. So here in this in our code, we have introduced two new functionalities, very important functionalities. The select input, this part is the select, we call it select input, and the radio buttons. So I will quickly go through the code that what we did in code to have this kind of dashboard. So let's see. So I have already discussed the text inputs, but in order to select input, I am saying that whatever I will select will be assigned to this input ID city. So if I select London, this ID will be input ID will be capturing London. If I select New York, this input ID will be having a value New York City. And then I want it to be labeled as in which city do you live. So if I Control A, Control Enter. So as you can see that here it is labeled as this select input box is labeled as in which city do you live. And after that I need three options, but I want that by default the blank will be got opted. So therefore I created a vector, and then I'm mentioning that what are the options that I want. I want the blank. The first thing will be considered as the default value, then London, New York City, and the Paris. Suppose if I remove this blank, hopefully I will not get any error and everything will be executed fine. So before that I will close this dashboard. Control A, Control D, so Control Z, Control Enter. So now you can see that the first part of the value of this vector is considered as the default value of this select input, and the graph got plotted based on that. Before that it was blank, and when I was in the server part, they're unable to find any blank thing, therefore I was getting error before. But now by default is London, so we have a graph there. And other thing is that of that dashboard is the radio button. That what is your marital status, and in the marital status I am saying that assign whatever you saying you're married or single to the input value marital. So if I will be selecting married, it will be assigned to this input variable, and then I will be labeling as marital status, that is coming from this part. And then in order to give two options, you can give as many options you want, but by default this radio button will allow you to opt only one value at a time. Then I'm saying vector married single, and I don't want to be any radio button to be opted by default. That's why I'm using selected is equal to missing. That's why none of it is assigned. If I don't use it, the first one will be opted as default. But you want that both the radio buttons get null values, then you have to use this selected is equal to missing. And in this part we have used the how to render text in your main panel or in your Shiny server, but in this Shiny app you have seen that we are also plotting a graph. So I will quickly go through the server part now, and under the server you have seen that I have previously discussed render text, how you can capture render text and assign it to the output variables. And here the important thing comes when I will be capturing the plot. So in order to capture the plot, we need to use the render plot function. And under the render plot function, what I'm doing is, I think before rendering plot, I call a data set, and after having that data set, I am saying that actually that data set have each variable named as the city name, as you can see here, London, New York and Paris. So I'm saying that select the variable. So the get function is saying that whatever get printed here is actually a variable coming from this data set, and this is my x-axis and this is my y-axis. The y-axis is static, therefore it's have nothing to do with the input variable, but my x-axis keeps on changing based on the choices that I am making. And after that what I'm doing is I'm saying label my x-axis as this. I'm using if I don't use it, my x-axis label will be not labeled properly. That's why I'm using this paste. So I'm going very quickly from this code file, but if you guys have any issue or if you guys find any confusion, in my previous videos we have discussed select inputs and radio buttons before. So here I'm giving a very quick overview of the things that we have discussed before. And once I have captured this plot output into this output object as employment underscore output, but you can name it whatever you want. You don't need to name it again as it is. But once I capture this plot into this object, I can call it into my main panel. But call that object into my main panel, this time I will not be using this text output because the object is not a text, it's a plot. So therefore I will be using functionality plot output, and then I will be mentioning the object that I want to plot, which is this employment underscore plot. So and that's why it's got printed here in the end of everything. because of the sequence because of it's happening in the last under this main panel sequence. So again, as you can see, that whatever city you get select, your plot got updated according to the choice you have made in your select input. So again, till now we have discussed text input, select input, radio button. So I will quickly go through another thing, very important thing that we also discussed, probably the last thing that we have discussed in our previous videos. So selected, I'll go back to the folder, and the thing that I will discuss now is this input file. Let's suppose if you want to upload any file into your dashboard, how you can do that. So in order to do that, you will be using input file functionality. I will be open it up, make it into a bigger window. So let me execute this code first. Control A, Control Enter. So as you can see that this dashboard is about how to upload file in Shiny dashboard. Let me upload any file. Suppose if I'm using data CSV file, open. So it's showing me this data, but what's happening is that while this input file function is actually, once I will be mentioning the file, it will be capturing this table. So this table is saying what's the name of the file, what's the size of the file, what's the type of the file, and what's the data path. So, and mostly we'll be using this data path to call our file. And then the second part of this functionality is plotting the table under my main panel. And here I am giving that you can upload a CSV file or tab delimited file. So what I will do, I will go to code and to show you guys how you can use that. The important thing is that I use that file input functionality under my main panel. So this is the function that I have used to have this option to input to upload the file. But you can even use this functionality into your sidebar panel too. Once I will be using file input, this is the input file variable. So it will be capturing this matrix, the first matrix that you can show. So it will be capturing this variable, will be actually a matrix or a data frame, which will be having the name, the size, the type, and the data path. And then I will be calling that this file input will be labeled as upload your data here, which is written down here. So once you will upload your file, this object will save the whole of this data table or a matrix. And once you will input the file, what I want to do is that if you look at here, so what I am doing is that I am saying that I'm creating an output object, out underscore data underscore f1. I'm calling it f1 because this is the first output object that I want to paste. So I'm saying render table because this is a table, therefore I'm using render table functionality. And I'm saying that if is.null input data f is mean that if this data object input object is having nothing, then return nothing. I'm doing this thing because if you don't do this, your R Shiny will show an error in your dashboard. Therefore, I'm doing this and saying as if there is some value in my input data underscore f, then assign it, and then use the render table to assign that table to this output object, which I am using here in my main panel. By using here, you can see that instead of plot output or text output, I am using table output functionality to print the table which got captured here. And after that, what I'm doing is that based on this data path, I want to get the data into my R's Shiny server, and then I will be using that table to be printed here. This input file is actually not calling this data table. We will be calling this data path to assign that data to our data object, and then we'll be using that data object to be printed here. The input file is just allowing us to get this information of the file that we browse or uploaded here in this part. So in order to do that, first I will be using the reactive function. We talked very in detail about reactive function. So all the functions like select input, radio buttons are all reactive button. Whatever you make a change, the Shiny server will automatically execute the code again to see is there anything to make adjustments for your output files or not. So again, so whatever you make in your select input or radio buttons, what this reactive function will be get updated related to the new options. So here I am saying that if there is input file is again the same thing. If there is nothing selected, then return nothing. If there is something in captured under data underscore f, then I want to be read the table based on the file spec, because then first I'm doing is that I'm creating an object, and under that object I'm assigning the table which I captured under my input $data underscore f, and then I'm using that data object to get the data part, and then I'm saying header is equal to true. The important thing is that I'm using read.table, and the separator of the file is actually coming from these options CSV or tab, which is defined in my input variable data underscore t. T means data type. Again, I'm very quickly going through about these things. If you guys have any confusion, kindly go through the previous videos. And in the end, what I have done is that I want to use the render table function. I assign that table to a new output object data underscore f2, and here I'm saying if there is nothing selected, return nothing. Otherwise, return data reactive function which I have created here, which is capturing this, which is capturing nothing, or which is capturing a data object AA, which is actually the data which we uploaded, and then I'm assigning this new data, the data2, into my table output function. So this is about that how you can input a file. In other videos, I also have shown you guys that how you can download the graphs or the data tables from the dashboard. So you can, instead of upload, you can also download things from Shiny dashboard. So I will close this thing now. Before ending this video, I will quickly go through another thing that we had discussed before, is the animated sidebar input. So I'm quickly going through all those things to show you guys that what we had covered, and in order to give a quick overview that how strong Shiny Studio, Shiny dashboard is. Control A. So in order to execute it, so you can even create animated charts in a Shiny server. Sorry, in Shiny dashboard. So suppose if I execute it, so this is here we have used the slider input. So if I play this, you can see that my graphs got updated according to my slider input functionality. So this functionality is the slider input functionality, which works almost the same as the way we work with text inputs or radio button. So I've used this thing, the functionality, and then I'm saying that whatever is the value got here will be assigned to year. Then I'm saying that label it as employment rate in the given year. Then I'm saying that the minimum of that the minimum of this scale will be coming from the data that I already uploaded here to the minimum data under $year variable. Then maximum is coming from here, and then I'm saying that what will be the default value will be by using by this functionality, and then I'm saying that because I will be using that animate is equal to true. If you don't say animate is equal to true, you will not have this play button. So let me see if I use it as false. You can see that. So let's see if I execute it now. Control A, Control Enter. You can see there is no plus button. You can have to manually click on the scale to change it according to your need. But if you want it to be play button to animate it, you have to make it true. And all other things will work the same way, the way we had discussed before. The last thing is that I want, so in here you can see Control A, Control Enter, that there is a gap between my slider input and my text input. This thing is happening because I use the functionality div style. So in order to create gap between your input functionalities, you have to use this kind of thing. So here I'm saying 300 pixel. You can further increase, because if I increase it to 500, the distance between these input functionalities will increase. So let's do it. Control A, Control Enter. You can see that now it's gone further down. And so this is all about a bit quick overview about the things that we have covered, and we will start making a bit going towards a bit more complex side of the R Shiny. Thank you for watching the video.